Hello and welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. Our guest this week is Jeannie Pinder. She spent 23 years at the New York Times and then founded ClearHealthCosts, a journalism company bringing transparency to healthcare costs. You can follow her at ClearHealthCosts. Our host, of course, is Sri Srinivasan, the Marshall Loeb Professor at the Stony Brook School of Journalism and co-founder of Digimentors, a digital and virtual events consultancy. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're also live on our Digimentors site. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the executive producer and sometimes guest host of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. It is a pleasure to be with you as always. We have folks watching. I want to offer a hello to Jonathan Borstein, who is joining from the East Village. Jonathan, always great to see you. Please share this post. If you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on Twitter, you need to click play on the post so that when you comment, we will actually see it. Please tag your friends and let them know what's coming up. Diane Stefani is joining us from Margate, New Jersey. It's a beautiful day in Margate. And Doug Levy is joining us from Northern California. Looking forward to this discussion about such an important topic. Absolutely. Health costs are ridiculous. We'll also be talking with Jeannie about her career at the New York Times, where she spent 23 years, mostly on the foreign desk, and she spent a lot of time in Russia as well. Deborah Bernick is joining us. As she's baking an apple pie in D.C. Deborah, always good to have you join us. Thank you. Miriam Berkeley joined us from Hell's Kitchen, watching on Facebook. Miriam, I got your message right before the show. I'm glad it worked out. Sorry you were having trouble with the link when we right before we started. Our good friend Carla Baranauckas, one of our producers, is watching from New Jersey, from Weehawken, New Jersey specifically. And she helped put us in touch with Jeannie. Carla, thank you so much. And thank you for the tweets you put out. Excuse me, as you can tell, I'm fighting a little bit of a tickle in my throat, but thank you for your help. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar joining us, and it's a beautiful day. Dr. Chandrasekhar is the co-host of She's on Call with Dr. Marina Kurian. The show airs at 11 o'clock on Sundays, just a little after our show. Linda Lawrence from Long Island and Patricia Freudenberg joining us as well. Thank you, Patricia. And David Satterley joining us from Central Iowa, where the tall corn grows. Jeannie does have Iowa connections. I wonder if David and Jeannie go back. We'll find out in just a moment. But again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We do this show every week at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. For those of you watching on replay, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. We are live every week on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And you can always watch later, right after the show ends. So now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on our host, Sri Srinivasan. Hi, Sri. How are you doing?
I'm doing
Good to
great.
see you.
Doing great, Neil. Thank you for putting this show together every week. It's incredible the amount of work that you and the team put in. So let's start by thanking that awesome team that we have. We are doing this now for 5.5 years. The team has come in the last couple of years, and we're so grateful. You're the executive producer, Paula Kiger in Tallahassee at Big Green Pen, Steve Taylor at Steve DeReeve in Philadelphia, Julia Weeks at Julia L. Weeks in Brooklyn, Carla Baranauckas at Kabara in New Jersey, and Neil's in we're Virginia, right outside DC. We couldn't do this without them, and this is part of the kind of work we do at our company, Digimentors. We're able to put together shows that are very different from the usual talk shows. Instead of just having a Zoom call, we get a fully produced, fully annotated, show that you're going to see today. We do also social and digital consulting. We do conferences, summits, webinars, talk shows, training workshops. So if you know anyone who needs help in any of these areas, please have them contact us. You can see our email addresses right on the screen, Sri@digimentors.group and Neil@digimentors.group. And if you have any questions, please do get in touch. We would love to work with you. And we also want to thank our sponsor of this show, our friends at MuckRack. MuckRack is an amazing platform for journalists and for PR professionals. And every journalist can have a verified profile on MuckRack. Please check them out, and please get in touch with us if you'd like to be a sponsor on this global show. And you see our email addresses again, and we'd love to talk to you about that. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here. How's your Sunday? We've seen some great comments already coming in, and Jeffrey says good morning to Jeannie, and Ron is watching from Dubai, and he says, checking in, it's called the A-Team, as he says about our team at Digimentors. So very grateful to you, Ron, for watching every week, for being a former guest, great supporter of the show. Ted, also great supporter, watching from Washington, D.C. We have so much news to talk about. And Pradnya is watching from Times Square. She's usually also down in the DC area. So I'm looking forward to seeing you, Pradnya, at some point this week. And Aparna is watching us on East Coast time and saying hello from Hoboken. Aparna is usually on the West Coast. We have a lot to get through today. The way the show works, folks, is we look at the paper very quickly at the beginning, the print edition of the Sunday New York Times, and then we'll bring in Jeannie. We'll be talking to her about her amazing career at the Times and now her very important journalism company that she started. And then we will go back and forth with the paper. So we want you to be fully engaged, talk to us as you're having your morning coffee or if you're preparing for dinner, wherever you are in the world. And we also want you to tell your friends, tag them right now. Anybody who's interested in media, journalism, accurate information, healthcare costs, healthcare, all of those things will be tackled today. And we're live every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. So tell us where you're watching from and just tag a friend. They can watch live or later on all of these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. It's reruns immediately on these individual platforms. As soon as we're off the air, we go for about 90 minutes. So let's take a look at the paper and then we will get to our guest, Jeannie. So here we are. We will look at the front page again, but the lead story is fabled police force shows limits of death inquiries. When officers kill, Texas asked the Rangers to step in, but their record is spotty. And here's a photograph of Frankfurt, Germany. After 16 years, Angela Merkel leaves behind a changed country full of pride and prosperity and anxiety. An FBI informer was amid mob at Capitol riot. What are the implications of that? A nation transformed under Merkel moves on. That's the headline. So we'll come back to that. Let's see, there's a lot going on in the paper. As you can see here, there's a special cooking section. We spent some time on this section last year when they did this. Much easier to save it in this tabloid size format. These are all 24 low-fuss, high-reward recipes. So I'm going to be cooking something from this tonight, I'm sure, or this afternoon. The Story Keepers, the book review is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. And here is the real estate cover, is the Big Yellow House. And renting a historic villa in Brooklyn, an artist collective is living and working together with dogged realism. So it's a different kind of potting that they're doing. And here is the metropolitan section. Marijuana shops bloom on tribal land. With New York State officials slow to establish regulations, members of the St. Regis Mohawks have already opened dispensaries. And a great photo here. I just wanted to show you, normally we don't dwell too long on the ads, but this is a 16-page ad for a company I don't know called Glossier. I think I've seen the name. Rupa, my wife, tells me it's a kind of an online Sephora. But imagine what something like this would cost to produce. One single page can be $75,000. So I'm sure it's not 75 times those number of pages, but certainly will be expensive. Anyone knows Glossier, or I don't know even how to pronounce it, let us know. Here is the New York Times for kids. They always say this section should not be read by grown-ups. And the cover is what school is actually like this year. 29 kids report. I think the COVID-19 regulations should be stricter. Cases are already rising. And I think there people will be interested in this. And let's keep going here. The Sunday Review cover is hard labor. So many Americans are burnt out and underpaid. Can we fix our broken relationship to work? And that's a very dramatic cover, as you can see there. If it's not clear, that's a briefcase and that's a rock. The Sunday Business cover is about the ultimate productivity hack, measuring personal achievements in the same way as the economy's output may be counterproductive. Okay, so I'm a big believer in measuring my steps and weight and all of those things. So I want to see why that's bad. The Arts and Leisure cover, finally, a Black composer at the Met. Terence Blanchard will help the Opera House end the 138-year drought. Wow, that is amazing. So we will, I'm sure, be hearing about that. The Bushwig cover, Bushwig Grows Up. The annual New York Festival celebrated a decade of drag, queerness, and artistry this month. Some queens want more. And look at this photograph here, and look at these hands. All right, let's go here. There are two magazines this week in the paper. One is the New York Times Magazine, the Voyages issue, always interesting, witnessing the world with new eyes. And that's the Parthenon. We were there this summer. And the T Magazine is Their Way or Not at All. What truly inspires? Design that makes no compromises and no apologies either. I was struck by the use of the almost exact shade of pink on both of these. As we've learned, they're not coordinated or connected much, these two magazines in the same newspaper, but it's interesting to just see that. And it's the design and luxury issue of the magazine, of the T Magazine. All right, I think with that, we are ready to bring in our guest and tell you all about Jeannie Pinder. And let's get that happening here. She is the founder of ClearHealthCosts, a journalism company bringing transparency to healthcare costs. And she was at the New York Times for 23 years. You can find her on Twitter at CHCosts for Clear Health Costs. And we are delighted to welcome Jeannie.
Hi.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning. Are you a Sunday morning person?
Not exactly. I'm still learning to be a Sunday morning person.
I envy people who can sleep in on Sundays when they're up otherwise on early. But I always start by asking about how you and your family have managed through the pandemic.
Yeah, well, it has been hard for everybody. We've been incredibly fortunate, I guess I would say. I myself had COVID in the early going. I had a really light case. My girls are fine. And yeah, incredibly privileged, incredibly fortunate. And so devastated by what this has done to the world.
Well, thank you. And yes, we should all acknowledge those of us who have been able to work remotely all of this time, how lucky we are. There were some great comments coming in, so let's say hello to some of your friends and some new folks who you may not know yet. Let's take a look at some of the comments. And everyone, please tell us where you're watching from and how you're doing. David saying hello from Central Iowa, and where the tall corn grows. And who else do we have here? Jeffrey says, good morning, Jeannie Pinder. And if you know any of these people, please jump in and tell us who they are. And
yeah, Jeffrey Gold, Dr. Gold from Boston, Massachusetts. He's a direct primary care doctor, and he's very interested in health costs. Direct primary care, of course, is a form of primary care in which the patient actually pays the doctor instead of paying the insurance company. So Jeffrey's really interested in this topic.
Okay, so we will get into, what the work your company is doing and how all these different terms. So I'm definitely interested in that as well. So thank you, Jeffrey, for being here. Thank you, Doctor. Nidhi Sinha is watching from South Orange, New Jersey. Nidhi, great to see you again. And I have orange here in honor of you. Let's keep going. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar says, nice color shirt. Thank you. I want to remind everyone that Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian host an incredibly important show every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. It's called She's on Call, and it airs live on all the social media channels. And please look for it at She's on Call. And today they're talking about COVID vaccines for kids and spirituality in medicine with two guests, two other MDs. So please do check in at 11 a.m. Eastern. Let's see who else is watching and saying hello to you. We have so many people watching. And Kevin Noblet is here. Kevin is former international editor of the AP and so much more. And Kevin, we have to have you on the show. We'd love to have you. Let's see who else is watching this morning. Janet is watching, says cousin of Jeannie. So let's, Janet, please post some inside dirt on Jeannie and growing up with Jeannie. That would be important. But in the meantime, Jeannie can say hello to you.
Hey, Janet, thanks for coming.
And Jessica is watching. Woohoo!
I wanted to give a special shout out to Jess, a former colleague of mine when I worked at United Way, and she watched last week's show with Jonette Howard talking about Billie Jean King. So thank you, Jess, for coming back. Also wanted to do a special shout out to my mom watching from Hastings on Hudson. And, I'm just noting that my mom is watching on YouTube today instead of her usual Facebook.
Yes.
So Mom, I'm glad to see that you're expanding your social media repertoire. And of course, Jess is watching from Portland, Maine. So I'll let you get back to the greetings tree, but I want to do those two special ones.
Thank you. They are both very special. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. I think we have a couple of more. Ron says, I'm an early riser thanks to my father. Up at 4:45 a.m. every day. Own the morning, own the day. Oh my God, I have to steal that. I love that idea. Oh. Jeannie seems a little skeptical, but...
What time do you go to bed, Ron?
And then one of the things Ron does is he lives in Dubai, and he walks around and takes photographs and shares it with us. So he does 5 miles by the time I'm, barely awake. So we'll see. He goes to bed at 9 p.m., Ron says. So that certainly helps. Let's see who else. Dr. Nirja is watching from Dallas. Hi, Doctor. And own the morning, own the day. It's resonating with Jessica as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of people who believe in the morning are able to do that. I used to be, Jeannie, a 2 a.m. going to bed at 2 a.m. person. And then my twins made me have to wake up early. And Patricia says, excited for the interview. Welcome, Jeannie. So let's get started and talk about, Ron never sleeps, says Jonathan. Let's talk about the company you founded, ClearHealthCosts. Where's the emphasis on those? Is it on the clear, the health, or the cost? So talk all about that, and congrats on launching your own journalism company.
Thank you. Well, the emphasis is on all of them. ClearHealthCosts. I founded the company weirdly after leaving the New York Times. I volunteered for a buyout in the class of 2009 without any real clear idea of what I wanted to do. And a year later, I won a Shark Tank type pitch contest at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism in front of a jury of venture capitalists and internet bigwigs who thought that I could build a company telling people what stuff costs in healthcare. So at the beginning of 2011, I kind of looked at the problem. I almost gave the money back because I realized how hard it was going to be. And then I won another $20,000 grant from the International Women's Media Foundation. So I had $40,000 worth of no strings attached seed money, which isn't really enough to start a company and certainly not enough to dismantle the healthcare industrial complex. But it looked like a sign from the universe that I should go ahead and do it. So I did. And now we're flourishing, actually, from that sort of inauspicious beginning. telling people what stuff costs in healthcare, changing people's lives. We do this work not only on our home site, but also in partnership with other news organizations. And we do say we're the happiest people in journalism these days.
What makes, well, apart from the fact that it's flourishing, the happiest part is also because you're helping so many people, right?
Yeah, we are. We're changing people's lives. We're telling them how to get healthcare that they didn't think that they could afford. We're helping them understand that, no, they're not crazy. The bills are crazy. That there is a way to negotiate and to navigate in healthcare, and to let them hear other people's stories and to tell their own and to help us solve the problem. It's kind of, I guess we could call it co-creation. We think of our work as something like a mashup of Kayak and the Waze traffic app.
Love it. Love it. Those are two apps that have changed the world. So we hope you're able to continue to do that and grow. Paula's put in the website, ClearHealthCosts.com. So everyone should check this out. If you're overseas, a lot of this will sound so strange, but you have heard the stories about how America is the only advanced country that doesn't have universal health care. America is the only country where people have everyday illnesses and can go bankrupt. America is the only country where people have to decide whether they want to eat or go to the doctor. And it's horrifying to think that's where we are, but that's where Jeannie's website can help. So let's frame the problem first and then tell us how you're tackling it. What is the origin of America's problems? When we were growing up or when our parents were growing up, was it different? Was there an inflection point when things went so bad? Or has this been the American way?
You know, it's really interesting, the history. There have been a lot of inflection points. You could trace it back to a certain degree to the post-World War II era, when industry was fighting for talent. And that was when the employer-sponsored healthcare system began to flourish for all sorts of really good reasons. And yet what's happened is that now, since we have this third-party payer system, there's the insurance company, the provider, hospital, doctor, whatever, and then there's the patient. When you have that kind of insulation of individuals from costs and this sort of complicated payment system, then you wind up with what we have now. Another inflection point came when a lot of the nonprofit insurance companies, like the old Blue Cross Blue Shield, became for-profits. And that suddenly completely changed the equation. And that also is a deciding factor in where we are today. And plus, let us not forget, this is a country that's built on capitalism, an economic system that doesn't necessarily find itself consonant with things like social justice and benefits like the European social democracies.
And just empathy for everyday people. That's all lost here. So thank you for that background. We have some people who already love the analogy of the kayak and Waze. Jeffrey says he also calls DPC a combination of Netflix and Costco. DPC is, do you know what that is?
Yeah, direct primary care.
Right.
So as many of us know, if you go to your primary care doctor, you might come out with a bill of $650, or maybe it's only $250, or maybe it's $650 plus $450 worth of tests. With direct primary care, what you do is pay sort of a subscription rate to your primary care doctor. That could be a monthly rate of $39, $59, $79, $139. The prices vary depending on the practice. But what that gets you is all you can eat primary care. So that would be a flu visit, a sinus infection, stitches most likely, wellness visits. Quite often, the primary care will also give you a discount on common medications and tests like x-rays and MRIs. Direct primary care is not available everywhere. One place it is available is in Boston, Massachusetts, where Dr. Gold practices, and he is a huge proponent of direct primary care.
Thank you, doctor, and thank you for doing that. Just to be clear, we have seen versions of this in New York. It's offered as concierge care, and super expensive. Those are not the numbers you hear, right? It's like $5,000 a year and things like that.
Right.
What do doctors give up in order to participate in something like the direct primary care? What do they gain? What do they lose?
So in direct primary care, generally you're not reimbursed by an insurance company. So somebody like Dr. Gold has to be able to say, look, I care deeply about my patients, and I care more about that than I do about getting into the insurance company system. So he's essentially taking more of a risk, although he spends a lot more time with his patients than most primary care doctors who are not DPC are able to.
One of the things that I'm not clear on, and so I'm so happy to hear that you're praising Dr. Gold. When I see, especially dentists who don't take, that's where I typically see don't take insurance, I always associate it with someone who thinks they're above the existing system and are much more expensive, don't want to be bothered with the paperwork. So I've got to say, it's not, in my mind at least, not a positive association when someone says, I don't take insurance. So you're saying this is a different approach, but how do we make that clear to, lay people like me?
Well, I think a couple of things. Concierge medicine, when it came on the scene, this like $5,000 a year thing, that was a reflection of doctors' dissatisfaction with the system. What evolved from that, though, is the direct primary care thing that Dr. Gold participates in. I will also say that there are a lot of doctors who actually will charge less on cash than they charge the insurance company. This is one of our many secret tips, and not so secret tips. We tell people quite often that if you put away your insurance card and pay cash, you can do better. And that's a strange thing, because most of us are used to thinking that we pay our insurance premium and that gives us access to the lowest price possible. But in truth, quite often you are paying more if you're using your insurance card. It's crazy.
But you're saying that that's in addition to your insurance, you would also pay by cash and then get reimbursed? Is that what you're saying?
No, actually, we tell people sometimes what you should always ask before a procedure, if you have the opportunity, what is that going to cost me on my insurance? What is that going to cost me if I pay cash? The blog post here, is it cheaper to pay cash than use your insurance? It could be, and increasingly that is true.
And this you wrote in 2014, so
yes.
This has obviously been around. And when you say cash, credit cards also apply?
Yeah,
or is,
Just paying something up front.
So again, Jeannie, this is the first time we're meeting, so I'm going to reveal all my biases and ignorances along the way. When I see someone saying, pay us cash instead of paying us the regular way, I associate it with like corner delis where they're trying to save some money, or my old school immigrant travel agent who would like under the table give me some cash kind of thing. So you're saying this is above board?
Yes, the marketplace has completely changed, and you might not have noticed it if you had what you construed as good insurance, that generally the sort of creeping price of insurance premiums plus your deductible plus your copay plus your co-insurance, that thing that makes you pay 20 or 30% after you met your deductible, like all of that really adds up. You might find that if you ask in advance, how much is that going to cost? How much is that going to cost on my insurance? Example, I actually bought an MRI for a family member by asking, how much is that going to be on cash? I had an MRI here in the New York area. I knew it could be $2,400 on insurance, could be more. And because we were nearing the end of the year, we hadn't met our deductible yet. I knew that if I paid cash, I might come out better. So I asked the question, how much is this going to cost me on cash? The person that I asked said, well, are you uninsured? And I said, no, I'm just a cash customer. I just want to pay cash. They were like, well, let me see. So I had a list of 3 MRI providers. Actually, the first one said, that'll be $900. I called the second one, same conversation. I'd like to buy that on cash. And she said, are you uninsured? I said, no, I'm a cash customer. She said, 700. And then before I called the third one, the first one called me back and said, if you can be here by 7 o'clock tonight, that'll be 450. So it's like surge pricing on Uber, right?
And so here's the post that says somebody saved $3,700 using our data. And Jessica has the best comment. My mind is blown. Jessica says cash versus insurance. So
right.
We're already teaching people. Now your site has a lot of tools and things like that. Is there a direct calculator that we can use? Or are you building one where all those different elements you mentioned that we can put in and then be able to figure this out?
Yeah, there is. I should back up and say the post that was just shown, the she saved 3,786, that was a different person. That wasn't me.
No, I understand. Of course,
tell that story.
Yeah,
but yes, we do have a calculator. If you go to the front page of our website and look up in the top right-hand corner, there's a button that says share your prices. If you click on that button, you can see our price check interactive software. On the left-hand side, you can contribute your prices. On the right-hand side, you can search our prices. We're deep right now in New York. We have New Orleans prices, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. It's not fully nationwide, but if you look in the New York area, for example, we have, if you could search on, do you know what, if you search on, here's a really good search on ultrasound, and you'll pick the ultrasound of the abdomen within 100 miles of 70145. That's a New Orleans zip code. This is a nice data set so you can actually see what it looks like. So we collect prices. We do a pricing survey on 35 common shoppable procedures. This ultrasound is one of them. The prices that we collect in our survey are reflected in orange. So they say price check journalist up to the flag in the upper right-hand corner. We have providers who are coming to us and saying, we want to share our prices in your database. And those are in green. If you back up, yeah. So if you scroll down in green, we have providers coming to us and saying, we want to share our prices in your database. They want to compete on price. So that's in green. $125 is a healthcare provider. Keep scrolling down, 150, that's one of ours. 150, this person says, I've had my ultrasounds done at EJ for over 23 years. My insurance changed. I have a $3,000 out of pocket, so I paid cash to have my ultrasound done again at EJ. So this is a person who's helping us fill out the picture. 166.81, that's one of ours. 170. Scroll, oh, stop there, back up. Okay, in the notes to that one, you can see it says specialty doctors require $500 self-pay deposit at check-in. So that means there's a sign out front that says no poor people need apply, right? So what we do when we're doing this pricing survey is we collect not only prices, but also notes about how you might approach this. So that $170 actually looks more like $500, and try to get the rest of your money back.
Wow, this is really important. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we have lots of new people who've joined us. We're talking to Jeannie Pinder, who has created ClearHealthCosts.com, and she was at the New York Times for 23 years. This is the New York Times read-along on Sundays. We read the print paper, and we have fabulous guests each week, and we have some more fabulous guests coming up in the Sundays ahead. So please tune in when you can. We are live, but we can also be watched immediately after this is over on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So please do join us for our future guests as well. And we have lots of comments coming in that we want to read as well. There's so much going on. I think you've really hit a nerve here, and you've opened the eyes of so many people. So thank you for that, Jeannie, and a great service. So let's look at some of the comments here. Sujana, Dr. Chandrasekhar says, surprise bills are supposed to be illegal and unrecoverable here. isn't that true? So let's define what a surprise bill is and your understanding of it, Jeanne.
So that is the question, define what a surprise bill is. In New York State, we have a surprise billing law that's supposed to protect you from surprise and emergency billing. However, if it's an in-network surprise bill, it's not covered by the law. Same thing with the law that is proposed on the federal level. The definition of a surprise bill can really be the thing upon which the whole thing turns. So you can get a surprise bill in network.
Sorry to interrupt, but I don't understand. If you say it's to protect people, but in network doesn't count, then what's the point?
That would be a very large question to ask of our regulators and our legislators, wouldn't it? I mean, if we wanted to stop and think about why this system exists the way it does in the first place, you might want to look at things like campaign contributions, pay-for-play politics, and the revolving door between industry and government.
Wow. Well, we're not going to be able to get into all of that on this show, but we want everyone to read Clear Healthcare Costs, subscribe, get their information. Aparna says people are making those decisions. Those are heart-wrenching trade-offs, as we were talking about that before. Dr. Kiger says, my surgery center has transparent bundled pricing, so I truly love your site. So I may have thought that many doctors and insurance people would be kind of against what you're doing, but glad to see that so many are in favor of it. And I have to say, I have been a bad consumer because I never really ask any of these questions. So everything's a surprise bill to me. So my takeaway is be more proactive and ask questions.
Yeah, but you're not a bad consumer. I mean, none of us really expect to go into the healthcare marketplace and get our pockets picked. Most of us feel like we're going into healthcare to be healed, that everybody there is well-meaning and good, or else that there's somebody who's kind of regulating prices or protecting us, because that's the way we approach the healthcare system. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that the system doesn't look at you the same way. The system looks at you as, if you want to be perfectly cynical about it, as a revenue opportunity.
And, it's capitalism, so that's allowed, but we want to think about how can we be fair, that word I used before, how can we be empathetic, sympathetic to people. Janine says hello from Newburgh, New York. Hello, Janine, welcome. And Dr. Gold says insurance is what makes primary care expensive. And that's important for all of us to know. And Diana is watching from Nebraska, welcome. And Apollo is watching from Philadelphia. Thank you, Apollo. We love our viewers from all over. Miriam says it makes sense. You're not paying for the insurance company's executives to profit. One of the stories I saw this week that broke my heart on Twitter, Jeannie, was a family that lost their baby after 25 days, the newborn after 25 days, and they got a bill in the $200,000 range. And the company, of course, had billions of dollars in profit. The CEO makes tens of millions of dollars. What is a company supposed to do in that? Is there any, in a situation where your life has been upended so badly and then you get hit with a bill for the patient or the baby who didn't survive? Are there things that could be done for that family? How does that work?
Yeah, we write about that. We do this work explaining health costs not only on our home site, but also in partnership with other news organizations. For example, and we have great Google juice. I mean, people find us online. I have an email in my inbox from a man who lost his wife earlier this year. He's got $650,000 in bills that keep coming to him and coming to him and coming to him. And the advice that we give to people is generally, we can't argue your bills ourselves, but we do hope that if we can tell your stories and explain that in a way that other people who are in the same situation can find your information online by searching for us. We have people who find us by searching how much does an MRI cost, how much does a CT scan cost. We had a guy who found us who was price shopping his lithotripsy. He had kidney stones and he was uninsured, so he was price shopping for that. And in taking this sort of vox pop grassroots crowdsourcing approach to this problem, we feel like we're making a difference and putting information in people's hands if they're able to use the Dr. Google search bar.
Thank you. Well, let's take a look at the this article that I was talking about, or this item here, about the couple whose baby died 25 days, got a $257,000 bill. Cigna made $8.5 billion last year, and its CEO made $79 million. So what do you say about this particular case?
I think these stories, when they're told over and over and over again, I will say when we first started out doing this back in 2011, I thought that the system was ready to topple because people were so angry and so upset. The system preserves its own and preserves its own prerogatives. The more stories like this are told, this is an amazing piece by Sarah Cliff from the New York Times, who's a terrific reporter. And the more these stories are told, I think the more people understand that they're not alone, that they can fight back, they can resist. They can change the equation by asking up front, how much is that MRI going to cost? And taking the approach that together we are strong.
And the idea, I mean, do insurance companies have kind of forgiveness funds or things like that?
Yeah, my guess is that this bill and the bill of the guy who wrote to us who lost his wife will ultimately be erased, forgiven. It helps to have news coverage in the New York Times. I would imagine that we'll see a follow-up on this one in days, if we haven't already seen it, that this bill has gone away. What happens is that the insurance company will point at the hospital will point at the insurance company, and somebody keeps sending a bill to the patient or to the parents or to the widower in this case. And what that serves to do is to actually scare the pants off of people, make them really sad, take up all of their mind share in arguing with this thing, makes them want to buy more of that insurance stuff, so to protect themselves. But ultimately, I think this bill will go away, the one that Sarah wrote about and the one that the widower wrote to us about. It's just that all the time and energy that people spend arguing about them, it's fruitless. It's a waste. And it's awful to have people who are in that position be feeling that they're going to actually be soaked for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, there's a meme on the internet that I'm sure you've seen, says, "Are we the baddies?" Where people are, these obvious villains don't know that they're villains. So make the case that the insurance companies are not the villains.
I will tell you that the insurance companies and the hospitals are all doing fine in this system. It's easy to blame the insurance companies to say that they are the only ones that are responsible, but the insurance companies are actually paying the hospitals. The hospitals are getting a lot of money out of it. The entire system is constructed to protect itself. And that includes also the pharmacy benefit managers, the drug companies, the intermediaries to the intermediaries, software providers like the software giant Epic that provides software to many hospitals. It's all this sort of interlocking system of protectionist policies, or people are protecting each other's income.
I was just going to say that we use the word Epic for a software company. There is another company called Epic, which has been in the news because they protect right-wing, conservative, bad people. Not that all conservatives are bad, but the kind they protect are really bad. And so it's funny that here's another software company called Epic. They may want to rename themselves. The spelling may be different. Let's look at some of the comments coming in. And thank you all for sharing your questions and your comments. We love hearing from you. We will get to the paper, but we're doing, I think, a real public service here. And I know Jeannie has so much to contribute. So let's look at Liz Pressman's comment. I live in rural Massachusetts and have a large herniated disc. It took me 3 months to get an MRI. They're considered like gold here. Doctors are very reluctant to prescribe them. So good to know for the future that I can offer to pay with cash. Can you break that down as you I know you're reading it live with me. Is it because they're just in rural areas, they're just hard to get? Or I thought doctors, and this is again layman talking, love to overprescribe these things because that's the game.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the circumstances here. I do know that some doctors will not prescribe an MRI until a patient has gone through, I believe it's 6 months of physical therapy. There are certain things that the insurance company considers like step therapy. And because I don't know enough about the circumstances here, I don't know whether that's what's going on. If there is a prescription that the insurance company won't pay for, then that may also be a factor in the doctor's decisions. I just don't know. I do know that in many cases, if you have a prescription and you're able to pay cash, you can get an MRI on the spot.
That's so upsetting to think that there's so much hidden information. Sujana, Dr. Chandrasekhar says, if someone is without insurance, she's an ENT surgeon, we offer a prompt pay cash discount to them, as we don't then spend the next 3 to 6 months chasing the insurance company to pay the bills they agreed to pay for in our contract, sending reams of documentation, making endless phone calls, etc. So thank you for that. But if they pay cash, they don't meet the deductible if they should need a catastrophic health expense.
That's all true. And thank you so much, Dr. Chandrasekhar, for saying that. The cash discount is something that is increasingly common, as we see. You're right also about meeting the deductible. However, we have met people who have maybe a $12,000 annual deductible. And then on top of that, once they meet their deductible, they're paying 30% or 50% coinsurance. There are many, many, many people in this country who are actually paying all their healthcare themselves on top of their premiums because they don't meet their deductibles. It's awful. It's awful.
Well, that's horrifying. And again, tell us, please, where we would go on the website to be able to enter this information. And so your deductible, the co-premium, all of that, where would we go?
Yeah, so if you go to the front page of our website and look at the top right-hand corner, there's an orange button that says share your prices. It should also say search prices. We should probably redesign that button. But if you click on that button, then you'll see our interactive software that has the price check guide, contribute prices on the left, search prices on the right.
Thank you. And do you yet offer any personalization, customization where I can become a member? You have my data. We can track this over time. This is a case where I would be happy to give my data in return for some customization and things like that.
Right. So we have talked a lot. The business model of journalism, Sri, as you know, is one that is evolving, shall we say. Our business model right now is that we do this work on our home site and also in partnership with other news organizations. When I say partnership, that means that our partners pay us. They are our customers. We have looked at various ways of eliciting revenue from either a subscription model or a hands-on personalized service like what you talk about. And we don't really see the possibility for that to be a flourishing business model right now. As you know, people don't like to pay for content on the internet. Another thing about subscription model for health prices is that your need for prices is episodic. It's not like you need it all the time. So if we were going to try to do a subscription for a year, you might need it only once a year, maybe twice a year. If you're a frequent flyer, somebody who has like a chronic condition and needs pricing information more frequently, odds are that you've met your deductible and you're already on to other things. So the way the system is set up, it really is designed to protect the current business model or to keep us from finding a really great business model that has to do with subscriber income. I think you're muted.
Thank you. we have so many great questions and comments coming in, so we won't be able to get to all of them now, but we'll try to get to them in a bit. But let us say hello to Dr. Lippy Roy, who's been a guest on the show multiple times, and my regular COVID weekly show as well. Greetings from Manhattan. I've ordered hundreds of MRIs for patients and just underwent an MRI myself last week. I had no idea. Should we still have insurance but pay for certain procedures, tests in cash?
So that's a great question. What I tell people is I'm not going to be able to give you advice, but I'll tell you what I do. Yes, I have insurance. That insurance will obviously be useful for catastrophic things like if I get hit by a garbage truck or if I have cancer. However, for incidental smaller things like an MRI or an X-ray or a prescription, we usually tell people it's healthy for you to ask, how much is this going to cost on my insurance? And what would it cost if I paid cash? And then if we all ask this question and insist on getting an answer, that will not only learn lots of things, save money, but also make it normal behavior that you should be able to know in advance what something is going to cost. You shouldn't have to be apprehensive every time you get a prescription, have an MRI, have an X-ray, have a doctor's office visit, be apprehensive about you're going to get socked with this huge bill, have to, skip the mortgage, forego the car repairs or whatever. We should all get used to asking in advance.
Thank you. Let's get to the paper, folks. That's that's Jeannie Pinder. She's Doctor of Information to help us all figure out what's happening in our healthcare costs. And we're looking at the New York Times. We'll come back to her and talk to her about her amazing 23-year journey at the Times as well. We have about 40 minutes with Jeannie here today. So let's start looking at the paper, and please jump in, Jeannie, as I flip through the paper, anything that you want to talk about, any people you recognize, byline stories, etc., any inside scoop from the Times, all of that is most welcome. So let's look at the front page here. Fabled police force shows limits of death inquiries. When officers kill, Texas asked the Rangers to step in, but their record is spotty. A nation transformed under Merkel moves on. And this is about Germany and what's happening there. I will say this story, Jeannie, hold on one second, folks. I think I'm having trouble with my Wi-Fi, so just 1 second. Sorry about that. All right. Sorry about that, Jeannie. I was going to say this story about the police inquiries and death is also a data story like you've been able to use in a different industry or different part of American society. You want to just talk a little bit about the value of that as I just kind of just show people the front page?
Yeah, so it's really interesting how sometimes the data is there and you can find it in public databases. Sometimes you have to go out and make the database. And that's what we decided to do, is to go out and make the database by making these pricing surveys and also by crowdsourcing. Data can be really important for any kind of journalism. And you don't actually have to have a huge number of data points. I believe that the story that you mentioned on the front page of the Times doesn't have 18 billion data points. I think it's something like 40, it's under 100, right? So that when you have even a small data set, you can draw conclusions from it if you dig deeper into what's behind the data.
Thank you. Split on vision. Democrats see fate in bills, in the big bills that they have. And schools cram for COVID tests across America. And this is about San Antonio and what's happening there. Here's an unusual story. Marines allow Sikhs to wear turban sometimes, or I guess this one gentleman who is Sikh. First Lieutenant Sukhbir Thur is the first Marine in the Corps's 246-year history to wear a turban on duty. And just for the grammar and spelling lovers here, look at the S, all those corpses in the corps, I guess the Marine Corps. I said it wrong here, but there's how you use the right use of apostrophe S, as you can see there. Let's keep going. And again, Jeannie, just jump in. Anything catches your eye. Here to help. How to help kids have a healthier relationship with social media. This is Christina Caron's piece. One of the things that's changed in your career in journalism, as it has in mine, that service journalism has gone from being sort of a afterthought for big publications to becoming mainstream or very important. In your case, that's your whole business.
Yeah, it's interesting because it used to be in days of yore that the only kind of journalism that really commanded interest and respect was foreign correspondence and investigative, and that service journalism was something that people pissed on as sort of unworthy of our time. But we're actually doing the kind of journalism that changes people's lives, whether you want to call it service journalism, investigative, or whatever. It's important.
Thank you. And let's not forget the main Pulitzer Prize is for public service. And often it was about things that changed things in society. And that's what was important. Let's see, we have a comment here from Rupa, who's talking about grammar school here. Arrested executive returned to China in exchange for seized Canadians. That was a big story. Deadly deluge exposes climate perils for China. And we're seeing a lot of fundraising, as you know, for diseases that are not as widespread, perhaps, or well known. And that's also something that's changed in the medical field. And so this is for the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, or FTD, it's called. Nation Transformed is all about Germany and its changes. And here is how Kiev rescued 96 Afghans and Nerves of Steel helped. In reversal, Israel's new government engages with the Palestinian Authority. North Korea stokes hopes for summit to officially end the war with the South. This is Kim Yo-jong, who is the sister of Kim Jong-un. He's his very powerful sister. Pilgrimage to a downed warplane in Papua New Guinea. This is obviously from a long time ago. And a journey back to meaningful things that shaped a child. A desperate evacuation of Afghan nonprofit workers. Interest grows in making reparations to Black residents at local level. What have you seen about healthcare costs and Black folks in this country? Is there, as bad as the insurance system is it even worse for minorities, poor people, etc.?
Absolutely. It's appalling. And, it's something that we talk about all the time. We're particularly interested in this right now. I think I might have mentioned when I was talking with Neil that we have developed expertise in vaccine delivery. When the pandemic struck, we sort of pivoted from all health costs all the time to all COVID all the time. And as a part of that, we recently won a grant with Epicenter NYC. You know Mitra Kalita, right?
Very well, yes.
Yeah. So we have this partnership where we're helping the city deliver vaccines in an under-vaccinated neighborhood in Queens. The disparities in communities of color in health costs and delivery are appalling. I knew it before, but I know it even more now. It's terrifying.
And everyone should check out Epicenter NYC. It's a fabulous site, and together these folks have really had an impact on tens of thousands of people getting vaccines. Isn't that the rough number?
At this stage, I wouldn't say that our grant is tens of thousands of people, but what we've done is to actually discern and divine some things that were actually not known about vaccine delivery, partly because we're journalists. So we found that this zip code that we were assigned to has 2 vaccine delivery sites, the entire zip code, and none of them accept walk-ins on a consistent basis. So if you want to ask yourself, well, why are people not getting vaccinated? Maybe it's because it's really hard. And if you make it easy, this is a story that we wrote about a pop-up site that we set up last Wednesday in this area in Queens. We had people flooding in. We have another one today. Actually, I'm going over there after I get done here to think about if there's a vaccine non-delivery problem, does it have to do with hesitancy, resistance, or does it have to do with logistical obstacles? We think the logistical obstacles are huge.
I see that Mitra Kalita is watching. Mitra is a dear friend of mine, and thrilled that she's watching. And she says, "Hi, it's been great to work with Jeannie." So that's just wonderful, and everybody should follow her as well at Mitra Kalita. And I also saw that you have Sri Bhagwan working with you, and she's part of the team there. So it's wonderful to see all those bylines together. And Nirja says, "I thought that pharmacies were giving vaccines now."
They're giving the vaccines, but as Mitra and I and the team have figured out, a lot of the pharmacies will require you to actually make an appointment. You can't just walk in. They will ask you for your paperwork. There are people in our communities who would rather not actually submit paperwork for various reasons. So making it hard for people to get vaccines is something that maybe wasn't a conscious decision in the rollout, but it's something that we're trying to understand and to address by having this van come in as a pop-up. Walk in, no questions asked. You don't have to make an appointment. We're going to make it really easy for you. This is a function actually of Mitra's Community Connections in Queens, with a consortium that includes St. John's University and the New York City Test and Trace Corps. As part of our grant with the city, we asked the city if they could send us a vaccine van. They said, well, we have 50 of these buses, but we have like 750 requests for them. That's not as easy as you think. So Mitra and her team with their connections went and found these little test and trace vans. We have 4 of them set up. They have people coming in by the dozens. Somebody says here that people are being paid to get vaxxed. One of the problems is that in this zip code that we were assigned to, that vaccine, the $100 vaccine incentive only goes to people who go to a city site. So you can't get it if you go to Walgreens or Rite Aid. Never mind that Walgreens and Rite Aid need an appointment first. You can't get the incentive. So we're passing out these $100 incentive flyers saying to people, yeah, but you can't get it here. But by bringing in these vaccine vans, we're able to give them the incentive, make it possible for people to get vaccinated. And we do think that this is possibly a solution for many other under-vaccinated neighborhoods, not only in New York City, but also in Montana, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. You make it easy for people.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that. Ellen says that, why do you still need to pay people to get vaccinated? And by the way, people joke around, wait a minute, I already got my vaccine. Do I get money? Of course you don't if you already did that. But this distinction about the city is important. And you've shown us how hard it is, in fact, to get vaccinated. And that's part of the problem. We have lots of other questions and comments coming in. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please follow Jeannie on Twitter at CHCosts. And check her out and what she's doing. And of course, check the website, ClearHealthCosts.com, and check out Epicenter and Mitra Kalita. We're going to go back to the paper. This is the obit section. Have you written an obit in your time?
I haven't written one recently, no. And I'm interested to know who died in the New York Times today.
I like the way you phrase that, who died in the New York Times today, as opposed to this gentleman, because there was a long period where the kind of people that were covered who died were, certain kinds of people, mostly men, and that great overlooked project, which Amy Padnani ran, and still, of course, exists at the Times, is very, very important. And we had Amy as a guest on this show. Let's see, Penny Harrington, 79, a trailblazer for women on police forces, is dead. She made a career of breaking blue ceilings in Portland, Oregon. So thank you for doing that, Penny. Cliff Freeman, 80, award-winning ad man who wondered, where's the beef? And that's a big ad campaign from the 80s. Some younger people won't recognize it, and people overseas may not, but it entered the lexicon of American consciousness in the political process with with that being part of the 1984 political campaign. And that's Cliff Freeman. And Sherwood Boehlert is former congressman, is dead at 84. He chided skeptics of climate change and urged Republicans to open their minds. Look at that. It's hard to believe he was a Republican himself. So this is how much America has changed, that when you read that blurb, you presume he had to be a Democrat, but in fact, he was a moderate Republican. We are seeing over time that there will be no moderate Republicans really left in Congress because they're too afraid to run against the Trump machine. Are you a sports fan?
Interestingly, my career in journalism almost started with sports. I kind of had to excise sports from my life when I became obsessed with all health all the time. So I'd love to get back to baseball. I'd love baseball.
Yeah, that's great. And Neil, of course, is a big baseball fan. I also want to say, for those of you who care about obits and remembering people who have passed, do check out the website. Miss You Graham is an app you can use to honor those who passed away, and you can find it on iOS and on Android. So thank you for talking about all of that. We are looking at an ad, coffee shop and career starter, and this is an ad for MasterCard. All right, you get to pick where we go next. We have about 30 minutes.
Oh, let's see. What about the review? I haven't looked at the review for a while. Yeah.
The Sunday review.
Yeah.
You get your times all online. Is that correct?
I do. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Did you ever think there would be a time like that when you were growing up or coming out in the business?
No,
you wouldn't be able to switch. Yeah.
No, I grew up in newspapering. I started, my first job was as a 13-year-old cub reporter at my family's newspaper in Grinnell, Iowa. And I remember when I was in grade school, when the Des Moines Tribune, the PM newspaper, came to my family's house, I would open it up, spread it out on the floor, and sort of wallow in it, just read everything. My hands filthy. Love paper. This is the Grinnell Herald Register, my family's paper. My grandpa bought it in 1944, and I grew up there. My sainted sisters now run it. And it's an amazing legacy, twice weekly, independent, one of the few remaining independents in Iowa, in the nation, actually.
Wow. You know, what would be fun is if I can ever get to Iowa to visit the paper and do a read along of the Grinnell Herald Register.
Yeah. And you could actually maybe go to the back shop where you would see things like this. You know, the New York Times, the headlines on the tabloids are called the Wood. It's made out of wood type. So this is wood type from my family's print shop.
That's amazing. Well, salute to your sisters and your family, 184-year legacy of running a local newspaper. We want to tell everyone, you know, we focus on the Times in this, but we have done the Washington Post, we've done the Toronto Globe and Mail, we've done multiple other publications. As I get to travel again, I'm sure we'll be doing other cities. But everyone, please support local journalism in your community, wherever you are in the world. Please pay for news. News isn't free. It costs money to build it. And please subscribe to a local newspaper. I subscribe to several, obviously, and it makes a difference. So please do that. All right, here's a great headline in tribute to Angela Merkel. She was the leader of the free world and tells you how far America has fallen. Trump had a mob. He also had a plan. And then this story, Chris Cuomo sexually harassed me. This is an unusual.
Amazing.
Yeah. Whoa. And I would say about this particular story is that you rarely hear about that this was somebody senior to him who is making the accusation. And the way, for folks who haven't read it, this is where you've heard the phrase, she had receipts, and she actually had the email where he apologized, not to her first, but apologized to her husband for grabbing her behind. And Liz says it's a family disease. I was caught up in various things over the last couple of days, so I haven't seen what the fallout has been. Has he been on the air on Friday night? Has he declared anything anything in response. I know there was a quote in the paper, in the story itself. There was a quote from him saying, something about obviously there was no sexual content in there. Yeah. As for comment, Mr. Cuomo said on Thursday night, as Shelley acknowledges, our interaction was not sexual in nature. It happened 16 years ago in a public setting when she was a top executive at ABC. I apologized to her then, and I meant it, is what he was able to say. Does anybody know, Jeannie, have you followed this stuff? Anybody know?
I haven't. I did see that insert that was in the story apparently late, like right before they went to press, but I haven't heard anything else.
Yeah, so I've seen these kinds of headlines, obviously, but I haven't seen what has happened. And what happened Friday night would be really important, whether he got to stay. We're seeing people who are Trump followers gleefully attacking Chris Cuomo as they attacked Governor Cuomo as well. But these are the same people who hold Donald Trump himself, who was accused of doing terrible things to women over his entire life, to a very different standard, or not holding him to any standard at all. Our relationship with work is broken. This is that story we read earlier, and it says it's time to wear pants again. And I have gone through 18 months of wearing pants, maybe 5-10 days, something like that, unless it's cold outside. So this is one of the things that has to change, obviously. And then, very important editorial. Everyone should read this. This is no way to end a pandemic. Getting first shots in arms globally is more important than any vaccine booster program. That's not to say people who aren't, who aren't in danger need a booster shot. Yes, they do. But we need to get everybody a first shot first, is what the point here is. And DeSantis is playing with fire. The governor's harsh COVID policies are unpopular even with some Republicans. And adoptees have a right to still could put an end to the peril facing transnational adoptees. I didn't realize that. And we know there are obviously lots of adoptees from China, from the former Soviet Union, from Korea, etc. So I'd be interested in reading that. And can Biden recover? This is the conservative columnist Ross Douthat, who wrote, I thought, a terrible column last week where he said, when we noted that 1 in 500 Americans had died, he said, well, that's bad, but wouldn't it be worse if it were 10 times that number? And it was a weird story, a weird essay. To save tenure, we need to change it. The fight over tenure is a proxy for a larger debate over academic freedom. Having lived in academia for 25 plus years now, I will be looking forward to reading that. We have about 15 minutes. Where do we go next?
How about that magazine? That voyaging thing looked really appetizing.
Yeah, voyages. So when is the last time you were on a plane and traveled?
Oh, it's been so long. I went to a MisinfoCon conference, Hacks Hackers, in February of 2020. I took the train to Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you didn't realize that misinformation was going to be so important and one of the reasons why we're still in the pandemic.
Right. Who did?
Here we go. This is the voyages issue, which is different from travel, the travel section. And Neil, if I can ask you to jump in, do you remember what the plan is for the travel section? Because they stopped the at-home section. I don't know if you know the answer.
I don't remember, Sri. I don't know when they're going to bring it back. I thought was interesting is that when we did the Washington Post read-along 2 weeks ago, they already have a travel section in print. But we'll see what we can find out in terms of the New York Times travel.
And we want to remind everyone that it's worth going back and watching your January 2020 read-along at the home of Amy Worship, the New York Times travel editor, Seb Modak, who did the 52 places to visit in 2020 or 2019. He was there with you, and you just had so much fun. I was so jealous I was there with you that day. But you can find that in our archive on YouTube. Everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Srinet. and you can find all our shows and get alerts when we are live.
It was incredible. They released the 52 places in January of 2020, and just 2 months later, everything shut down. So
yeah,
this is interesting.
Yeah. This is Athens, where my family was there this summer, and it was great to be out and about. We were very lucky that we escaped the vax protesters there and also the fires there. But anybody who wants to go to Greece or in the years ahead, please let me know. We'll share our secret itinerary with you. In Athens with my daughter, I could finally pay homage in person to the classical education my father gave me, by Thomas Chatterton Williams, photographs by Vera Luther.
Wait, is he the guy who wrote Self-Portrait in Black and White?
Yes, that's
yeah. That's an amazing book. If anybody has not read it, it's well worth reading. I'd be interested to read that piece of his.
Yes, keep going here. Look at all these pictures and how they're in black and white. The Parthenon, which was dedicated to the patron goddess of Athena, patron goddess Athena of Athens. And Take Me Out. After 18 months of pandemic parenting isolation, I knew just where to go, a minor league baseball game in Spokane, Washington. I know Neil would like to go to a Yankee game soon.
That sounds lovely.
All right, look at this. I'm still worried about all the vaccine issues around this. Mountain Time. Way up in the Alps, I tried to see my Swiss childhood anew. Photographs by Namsa Lueva. Look at these pictures. Cousins.
Beautiful.
And yeah, just really stunning pictures. Yeah.
Isn't there a piece in there about Kiev? I think
yes,
I read
I think
it
so.
online.
Yeah. My oldest friends and I went to Las Vegas to mourn the ones we lost and honor how little time the rest of us have left. Wow, that's The Men of 833 by Mitchell S. Jackson. So I'm not sure what 833 is, but it'll be that a zip code. I mean, a phone area code. Open City by Rosa Leister. Almost by accident, I stumbled into Kiev, the pandemic's party capital. I had no idea how much I needed it. Photographs by Georgy Pinkashov.
I read that online earlier this week, and I was so excited. You know, Kiev, when I was there, it was kind of dowdy and frumpy, and but since the Maidan, it's been very different. My developer, my tech lead, lived in Kiev for a while. And in fact, we were redoing the website when the Maidan uprising came about. He was doing community patrols in his neighborhood to protect the family.
Wow.
But it's nice to see Kiev now as like a party capital. I'd like to go.
Yes. Are you a crossworder?
I was in a previous lifetime. I had to excise it from my life because it became, when I was working at my family paper as a young person, we used to have a crossword competition, me and the editor. We couldn't get anything done until we'd crossworded, and it became an obstacle to getting stuff done. So I kind of had to stop.
I hear you. This is one of my favorite things in the New York Times app, the spelling bee. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's go head to head, one word each.
I don't do this one either.
Oh, you don't do this one. Okay.
No,
so the idea is using the middle letter, you have to come up with a word of more than 4 letters. So I'll go first. Dial, D-I-A-L.
Guild, G-I-L-D.
There you go. Well done. See, you did that instantly. And here is the big crossword puzzle.
I used to love that thing.
Yeah. All right. We've got time for maybe one more section.
I don't know.
By the way, everyone who has a kid, go out and get the print paper today. Neil, I'm sorry to bring you back here, but is this something you can buy on the newsstand, or is it only for subscribers? I can't remember.
No, it would be in the newsstand. It's a print-only special section. So unlike the cooking, there are 2 special sections today. One is the New York Times for Kids, and one is that special cooking pullout. You can get a lot of the cooking information online, and they have a great app. But the New York Times for Kids is not available online. People only can see it if they buy it or if you flip through it. today. So I take one thing that's interesting in terms of the cover. This cover is by Arnav, this 13-year-old who drew it. There are 3 different covers they're using in today's special section, depending on where you live. You get a different
Nice.
book.
So if anybody who has a kid and is in a place where you can get a print paper today, it's worth buying just so that you have this
special. Yeah. The centerfold is really interesting. This is all about the school year. I mean, there's some commentary online about how this was, fear mongering, but I think this is very real. And what's interesting is that quote on the front page where that student is asking people, "Come on, get vaccinated. The regulations should be stricter. This is ridiculous."
Yeah, and that's one of the things that anti-maskers are using, saying, "Oh, our kids are in peril by wearing masks." But you see kids often are able to wear them when necessary. Lights, cameras, jokes, behind the scenes, and the silliness of the Kids Tonight Show. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And here's a full page ad, I guess, for the Times. And I believe that girls should be paid as much as boys do in jobs. I don't know why they're not, but it's not right. Just because we're girls doesn't mean we don't work hard enough. Girls can do everything boys can do and more. Not getting paid the same amount is just wrong. And look at that. A 9-year-old understands that, Jeannie. And we know many, many men who don't understand that, who are setting policy and rules and things.
I'll tell you, my daughter, who is 8, will, when there's a song lyric or something that refers to boys or him, why not girls? Why are they talking about everybody?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And there's the cooking section right there.
Yeah. I noticed that this is not a regular thing in the Sunday paper, right?
No, it's not. It's about twice a year they do this, Neil. I think
twice a year. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to see the way the Times cooking section has become such a source of income and buzz for them. It's not something that you would automatically have assumed would be that important for them, but it is, clearly.
So Aparna is giving a shout out on the kids section, Catherine Chilton and the Learning Network team, and our friend Jess is New York Times Cooking.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Obviously, the Times, Jeannie, has always had restaurant reviews and articles about food and the food industry and all of that. Did they run recipes all throughout, as far as you know, or?
They did. I was on the styles desk for a short period, and they did actually run recipes. They had Mark Bittman, obviously, the minimalist. But this has become, the recipe thing has become a sort of a profit center in itself. That's much expanded from what they used to do in the food section. So.
Oh wow! Look at this. This is Cheppa. This is Cheppa Vepudu, which is fish fry. And Tejal Rao, who's a terrific food critic, adapted the recipe from the Indian cookbook author Archana Piratala, who in turn adapted it from her grandmother, Nirmala Reddy, growing up in Andhra Pradesh. So anybody watching in Andhra Pradesh, look at this. You'd never expect to have Cheppa Vepudu recipe in the New York Times and featured in such a prominent way. But that's another example of how the Times has been changing, and there's so much here. So what I like doing with this is when the rest of the paper goes into recycling, I just hold on to this section, and even though I have the app and everything else, there's something still delightful about looking at it all in print. So I like doing that. You mentioned the style section, and I would just quickly glance at this and look at this photograph here about the annual festival celebrating drag and more. What do you have time to? I know you've told us everything you've cut out from your life: crossword puzzles, sports. What do you have time for? Any TV, Netflix, binging, anything?
Yeah, I've been reading. I had been reading for a while, mostly just daily stuff, and the New Yorker. But I've been reading a lot of fiction lately, and that's been really interesting because I'm a huge reader. You can see behind me, and binging some, yeah, like maybe British police procedurals. I would have to admit to having a weakness for them. And I think it's partly because they're so, I wouldn't say predictable, but they're in this era where everything is unpredictable. And the British police procedural, likely the bad guy is going to get caught inside of an hour, right? And you'll have some, wit, and you'll have British accents, and you'll have good-looking people. And there's a seemingly inexhaustible supply. You can go back to Helen Mirren. Maybe you could take an Australian police procedural. So, sorry, it's one of my weaknesses.
We subscribe to BritBox, which is a combination of BBC and ITV. And so we get way too many British procedurals, police procedurals. It's about $6 a month, and we really love it. There is something special about reading and turning the pages of the New York Times, says Dr. Kiger. Thank you, Doc. There really is. And everybody who's watching, we do this every Sunday at 8:30. We have fabulous guests of various kinds, so please do tune in. Please tag a friend right now so they can watch this episode with Jeannie and learn about the healthcare costs and everything else. I remember the New York Times, Bring Your Daughters to Work Day eons ago. It inspired my daughter to become a writer. So that's wonderful, Naomi, to hear that as well. One of the things we do want, we didn't really get to talk a lot about your career. You were able to sprinkle it in a little bit. What does the New York Times mean to you now that you are in a different business that you started yourself?
It's an amazing institution, amazing place. I kind of grew up there. I started there in 1983 when I was 29 years old. And I was fortunate enough to work there in the glory days with the titans like Joe Lelyveld, Bill Keller, Clyde Haberman, Nick Kristof. It was amazing. I love it. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to work there. I'm really glad to be doing what I'm doing now also.
And you're having such an impact. We're very proud to be able to bring this episode to people so that they can learn about ClearHealthCosts.com. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you to stand by and come back in a couple of minutes and give us the a summary of why people should check out healthcarecosts.com and how we can take control of our own healthcare a little better. And then we're also going to ask you, if that's okay, and that's why we're going to give you a couple of minutes to think about it, a pro tip, something that journalists and others watching who want to go into the business should know, because you've obviously had such a wonderful and important career. So if that's okay, we're going to ask you to stand by, and we're going to come right back to you. Thank you, Jeannie. And everyone, please follow Jeannie on Twitter at CHCosts and check out ClearHealthCosts.com. So with that, I'm going to ask Neil to come back and tell us who's on tap for the weeks ahead and what else is happening.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sri. Our next week's show on the New York Times Read Along, our guest will be Jarrett Adams, who is a top criminal defense civil rights attorney, but also author of a memoir, Redeeming Justice: From Defendant to Defender, My Fight for Equity on Both Sides of a Broken System. It is sure to be a fascinating conversation. As we mentioned earlier, shortly after the show is over at 11 o'clock, you'll be able to watch She's on Call. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian are the hosts. This week's show focuses on COVID vaccines for kids and spirituality in medicine. You can catch the show at She's on Call on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can check the hashtag She's on Call on Twitter. Coming up, we have a couple other shows we want to let you know about. Rose Horowitz, who has been watching, is hosting a new show, Women to Follow. Her guest is Jamie Broadnax, the founder of Black Girl Nerds and the executive producer of BGN podcast, rather. So check that out on Tuesday, September 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We also want to give a shout out to our friend Stephen Kaplan. He has his show coming up on Saturday, October 2nd, the Spin It Social Hour, live from Photoville. His guest is going to be David Gonzalez, and David's work is on exhibit at Photoville. It's called Bronx Life. So you can check it out and the hashtag Spin It Social Hour. And you can find him on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and LinkedIn. Stefan, we still have to get together for pizza at some point when all this is over. So hopefully we can make that work. We also want to do a shout out again to our production team, Paula Kiger at Big Green Pen, Steve Taylor at Steve DeReeve, Julia Weeks at Julia L. Weeks, and Carla Baranauckas. We wouldn't be able to do this show without a great team behind us. Paula is putting in links to various articles and providing context. Sorry, Paula is, and Carla is doing such a great job getting guests for the show. And speaking of Carla, and there's a Paulo saying great show, and thanks, he's off to church. I also want to give a shout out to the Local Connection, which is put out by the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. Carla helps put that out every week. It offers story ideas and pro tips for journalists. Best of all, it's free. You can subscribe at bit.ly/local news tips. That's bit.ly/local news tips. And with that, I'm going to bring Shri back on, and we're going to have Jeannie come back to offer a pro tip and tell us again, remind us about ClearHealthCosts. Jeannie, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing. You could see we couldn't get to all of the comments in the in Facebook. If you have a chance to get back into the Facebook page and respond, that would be great. It generated a lot of interest. This whole idea of paying for cash and paying for healthcare with cash and shopping around really touched a nerve with a lot of folks. So any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming and listening and for sharing your ideas and your thoughts. Anybody who's here, if you want to email me directly with a specific question, this is only for the Sunday NYT read-along folks. Email me at jeannie@clearhealthcosts.com. I'll see if I can help you out. Meanwhile, in general, I think it's important for each one of us to try to take command as much as we can of health costs. That doesn't mean that we expect you to price shop your trip to the emergency room. But there are things that you can price shop. If you think about it, maybe 70 to 80% of your interactions with the healthcare system are actually things that you can have discretion over. And use our tools, search on our blog, ask questions, and let us know if we can help.
Thank you, Jeannie. That's amazing what you've done, what you've put together. You should be very proud. I know that you've helped make a difference already, and I know you have lots of ambition for the website as well. So people can subscribe to a newsletter, get on your lists. How else can they support you?
Yeah, and tell us your stories. Email me. If you have something that you think can help other people, share your prices on our tool. Click in that upper right-hand corner, and spread the word to other people too. We can have an effect on this. Watch the partners, including, if you could see the partnership tab up in our top nav. We're partnering with CBS News. We just finished a partnership with Gothamist WNYC Public Radio. And we have some other exciting news coming up beyond our partnership with Epicenter NYC and TBN 24 on the vaccine effort.
Well, please keep us updated, and we'd love to tweet out when you're doing that. You also have a Patreon. So that's another way where you can support Jeannie and her team. Fantastic. Congratulations, Jeannie. This is just great, important work, and we're seeing some lovely comments coming in from people. And Ellen wants you back already, so we will check in with you maybe next year if you're up for it.
Sure.
We'd love to hear. And thanks, Jeannie, for sharing valuable insight on health costs. And Jonathan says, interesting and important program. Thank you, Jonathan. And Liz says, amazing guest, great show, so eye-opening. Thank you very much. All right, folks, with that, we're going to end the show. We're going to say thank you to Jeannie one more time, and thanks to Neil and our entire crew of Paula, Carla, Steve, Julia, and everybody who's watched around the world. Tag a friend right now. They can watch us live. I mean, we're no longer live, but they can watch us later and catch all the great insights from Jeannie at the top of the show. And join us every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Next week, we have a fantastic guest, Jared Adams, who has been a defendant and a defender. And he's going to talk about another broken system. We just talked about the healthcare system and how it's broken. He's going to talk about the criminal justice system and how it's broken. So please join us, everybody. And thank you and goodbye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.